All right, welcome to another edition of the Sports Injury Central Pro Football Doc podcast. Big baseball version today. We're on the road, actually at spring training. Brought the kids, etc. Baseball, Padres, etc. Sorry for the setup at a friend's house and figuring out the lighting and the sound and away from the kids that are still sleeping here. But very special guest today, and we'll lead off with our very special guest, Mr. Baseball, Jayson Stark. And we did pre-record this, and we did it, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know which you want to say, right before the Rhys Hoskins injury. Jayson is a very big Phillies fan, and the guys, you guys, everyone did a really good job of that. You got the video quickly. We looked at it, and unfortunately, I mean, look, in game, preseason game, we said we worried about that ACL, and unfortunately, that is now true, and his season is done with really no chance to come back. Perhaps who was it that came back for a limited role after an April ACL in the World Series? There was one guy a few years ago. He played a tiny bit DH stuff, but realistically, Rhys Hoskins is done for the season. But let's roll with the Jayson Stark guest segment first, and we'll come back and finish off the rest of the stuff where we'll talk NCAA, NBA, and of course, a lot of baseball. We got to kick off the baseball season with a special guest, and no one better than Jayson Stark, Mr. Baseball, for our podcast to kick off the season. Welcome to the show for a second time. Thank you.
Dr. Chow, always good to be with you.
You know what's funny is, Jayson, people's like, oh, pro football doc, why are you talking baseball? Look, the reason why is I started doing football because I had almost 2 decades of experience as a head team physician. I actually, Jayson, have baseball experience. I was an assistant young helper doc with the Cubs. And, I helped with the Twins. I manned spring training some and what have you. But my baseball experience is not as tremendously vast. And, football has more traumatic injuries, although baseball is getting more and more now, right? Traumatic injuries. Heck, if we just look at the World Baseball Classic, right? We got a couple of them at the end there. How is that? Is the grumbling still there about injuries and World Baseball Classic, or is that just upset Mets fans and Astro fans?
Well, I don't blame any Mets fan for being upset or any Astros fan for being upset, but you know as well as I do, you know better than anybody that injuries happen. If you're going to play sports, that somebody's going to get hurt doing it, and it's terrible when it happens in a celebration like it did to Edwin Diaz. It's terrible when a pitch gets away and a hitter as talented as Jose Altuve breaks his finger. I understand, but if you don't want players to get hurt, then just put them in bubble wrap and never play sports. Right? Like Juan Soto made it through the whole World Baseball Classic, went back to spring training, was playing just a casual game on a minor league backfield and hurt his oblique. So it just happens because it's the nature of sports. Sorry about that. It's terrible.
Yeah, and so Altuve, we think, actually looking at video, it actually seemed to have hit his left hand first and then his right thumb. And right thumb is probably the better, quote, thumb if there is one, and surgery. But I think 8 to 10 weeks is a good timeline. Like, he'll be back and ready to go right at that timeline. Diaz, unfortunately, is obviously done for the season. And Jayson, that one we got lucky on, I guess. I mean, there wasn't even any video of it actually happening. He was in this celebration jumping up and down. But based on how his knee was bent and drooped and the looks of it, that's why we wrote and published that night that our fear was patella tendon rupture, which is kind of calling a zebra, right? I mean, that's something unusual. In medicine, we have a saying, if you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. And jumping up and down in a pile, you'd say, well, is that his ACL, whatever? But we're like, yeah, that was a weird one. And it probably just was mistimed, right? I mean, people are on his shoulders, hugging him, and instead of in rhythm, because they don't practice the celebration, he's going up as everyone else is coming down, right? And all of a sudden he's got all this extra load on his kneecap and patella tendon. Very, very unlucky injury.
Yeah, you know what though? It's amazing that more athletes in all sports don't get hurt in those celebrations. Because a lot of stuff happens that I think makes the people in the middle of them conducive to injury. You know, especially in baseball, you have those mound piles. That's a nightmare waiting to happen. You know, it's a broken bone, blown out knee waiting to happen. And it's incredible to me it doesn't happen more. And jumping up and down with a bunch of people. It's fluky, but it is dangerous. It's more dangerous than it looks. Um, there are celebration injuries that happen every year. You know, I keep track of all the weird and wild stuff that happens every year. It happens every year. It's just really rare that it happens like this. You know, I'm not sure if you've seen the reporting that we've done in The Athletic, but our Mets writer, Will Salmon, reported a couple of days ago that because they were able to get him examined, scanned, treated, operated on as quickly as they did, it does raise the possibility that he somehow comes back by the end of the season or by the postseason. Does that seem realistic at all to you?
Well, look, it's great that he got immediate care. And, but okay, so his timeline got sped up by a day or two or a week. Okay, does that help on the back end? Maybe. But this is a major tendon injury, and the last thing you can do is rush him back and then end up with an elbow or shoulder issue, right? And as you know, you pitch with your legs, right? And if you're pitching with your arm or your back, you're going to get hurt. Pitchers all have strong legs. You pitch with your legs. So it's not just a matter of getting the patella tendon to heal. It's getting the quad muscle strong and back in complete rhythm. So I think it would be a stretch. I won't say impossible. I'm not questioning the work of your ace beat reporter. And yes, if you would have delayed by 2 weeks, that might be the 2 weeks that would be on the back end of a postseason. But boy, I think it's chances are not good that he will return this year. And probably, as always in baseball, you want to play the long game, right? And so I'm not counting on it, unfortunately, for Mets fans. It was a freak injury. And you're right, Jason, celebration injuries happen. If I remember correctly, a year ago or more, the previous year, was it Cody Bellinger with a shoulder, or was it 2 years ago with a shoulder with the Dodgers?
Yeah, that was 2020, right? But that was
2020, yeah, exactly.
like that big
And it happens in
bash.
football all the time. Everyone knows Martin Gramatica tore his ACL celebrating that field goal. I remember Justin Houston, I believe it was, tore his ACL celebrating the sack. It's definitely happened. We used to have a guy on our team, the San Diego Chargers, Marcus Harris, unbelievable athlete who I don't even know the term of it, but every time he got a sack or made a play, would do a gymnastics routine and do a double back handspring or whatever backwards and stick the landing. And I always be nervous that something would happen to him, but it never did. He was and this was in full pads and everything, right?
Wow.
And he would go and do. He's a D lineman edge rusher, and he would go do that. Very athletic individual. But
well, I mean, that's the reason this is particularly tough is he's just irreplaceable. He's the very best at what he does in the sport, and so it's really difficult to accept one like this. We had some fluky ones last year in the postseason. Lance McCullers from the Astros cut his hand on a champagne bottle already. They had to push him back a few days. He pitched. David Robertson was a reliever for the Phillies. Bryce Harper had a home run. He jumped up, came down. I think turned his ankle. He was off the roster for a round, came back in the World Series. But, to lose a guy for the season who you literally cannot replace because nobody's as good as him, that's about as rough as it gets.
Yeah, and I get why, but I kind of like the World Baseball Classic. It's kind of like
It's incredible.
for golf, the Phoenix Open, right? I mean, the noise and the cheering and the sound, and hopefully it was exciting. But obviously, Mets fans don't want to see it happen again, which is too bad. I think. Otani versus Trout was pretty spectacular, right?
Just epic baseball theater, epic. And I often wonder, as a fan of baseball, as a chronicler of baseball, a teller of baseball stories, who writes the scripts. I don't know who wrote that script, but it was incredible theater. And
no, it was incredible.
Then just the greatness of Otani on display in that moment and every moment. I don't know. You tell me, has there been a more talented human being playing any sport than that guy? Not that I remember.
Well, you would know better than me, especially in the baseball world, how he's top pitcher and top hitter, right? In theory, Babe Ruth, right, was a pitcher too, but I don't know how good of a pitcher.
Never did both at that level at the same time. Was great at both, but not at the same time.
Yeah, which is pretty incredible. So, since you're the professional media guy and I'm just a guy doing injuries, feel free to jump in. I hear you have some questions, or you wanted to ask some questions. Feel free.
Yeah, well, there's I live in Philadelphia, and
yes,
Phillies, so I hear all the time about the Phillies and what they're up to, and people are always asking me about the Phillies. And the Bryce Harper injury situation is really interesting. He hurt his elbow early last season, DH'd through the season, through the postseason. And then because the World Series ended November 5th, he didn't have Tommy John surgery until I think it was just a couple of days before Thanksgiving, if I remember right. Okay, so just this week, the Phillies could have placed him on the 60-day injured list, didn't do that. And Dave Dombrowski, who was the president of baseball ops for that team, said the reason was didn't want to close that door. Was it possible he could be back before the end of May, which would mean playing rehab option type minor league games in the middle of May? They wouldn't rule that out. But Dr. Chow, that's under 6 months of recovery time. So I'm curious how realistic it is for anyone who has Tommy John surgery to be back playing baseball games, professional baseball games, in under 6 months.
Well, I think it's realistic depending on the situation, right? We talked about Otani. Otani had Tommy John surgery and returned, I think it was in 7 months to hit.
Right, between 7 and 8, right?
Closer to 2 years to pitch, but yes, about 7 months plus minus to hit. Is it possible for Bryce Harper to return in 6 weeks and under? Yes. Well, first of all, you got to understand he hit all last season with a torn ulnar collateral ligament, and there is some help to it being his right throwing elbow, but he hits left-handed, a little bit less stress based on the forces there. And he's used to hitting and playing with a lax ligament in his elbow. He did it all last season. So as long as he's healed to the point where he's not going to do further damage, I don't think he's going to stress that ligament much. It does not surprise me that the Phillies are not putting him on the 60-day IL, not only based on timeline, but also he's Bryce Harper. If you can get him back weeks before, you don't put him down, right? If he's the 25th guy on the squad, look, you're putting him down for the.
He's a franchise changer. But let me ask you a question here. You were talking about Edwin Diaz, and you used the phrase, "It's important to play the long game." So, the Phillies don't want Bryce Harper to spend the rest of his career as a DH. And if he re-injures this elbow, that becomes a scenario. The long game is to take your time, to follow the program that is laid out for you, not push it because you feel good, but you have a brand new elbow, so of course it feels good. It hasn't done anything. I think that's the counter argument to what you're saying. You don't rule anything out for a world class athlete, but isn't that the counter argument?
You're absolutely correct there, Jason. And I had also forgotten your timeline, correct, that it was November, right? Because the World Series was so late, et cetera. November, so less time to turn around for Bryce Harper. But here's the thing, and here's what you have to understand. When you're taking injury risk, it depends on the individual situation. I fully expect the Phillies to be conservative before they put him in right field, before they make a throw home or to third base from right field where you don't have always full warm-up, right? Even though you toss the ball between innings, et cetera. That is higher risk for your elbow than even a controlled ramp up for pitching, you might say. Obviously, pitching's harder because you're doing more and repetitive. But just all of a sudden, off balance, feeling a ball, trying to make a throw. I think the Phillies will be very conservative in putting him back in right field, especially with last year's new rules of DH in the National League. But I think hitting, what I'm saying, poses less risk than people think. The bigger risk is for throwing. For example, if Bryce Harper was a pure DH and never playing in the field, and we know he's not, I don't know that he needs to have the surgery. I mean, we have lots of athletes that are non-throwing. Like we see it in football all the time. It's an example. Unless you're a quarterback, you tear your ulnar collateral ligament, you don't even have it fixed in the NFL, and you still rap and play and do things. So hitting puts less stress on the ulnar collateral than throwing, and that's why I think the Phillies might feel more comfortable pushing that a little bit. I don't think they're going to go crazy, right? If his elbow's sore or hurting at all, they're not going to let him hit. But do I think he can beat the 60-day IL return? I would bet on it. Now, when, obviously needs to be discussions with the GM, the coaching staff, the athletic trainer, the team doctor, and the player, right? And remember, the player always has a vote too. One of the things I always say for football, I think it's germane for baseball too, return to play is a three-headed monster, okay? It has to be, it's like for the law of the land, and I'm not trying to be political, like going back to government or politics, there's the Congress, the president, the Supreme Court. They each has power over the other, right? Veto power and this, that, the other, et cetera. In any athlete returning to sport, it's the player has a vote, and the player could be the agent, the dad, the player himself, whatever. But the player side, the medical obviously has a vote, right? Whether it's the athletic trainer, physical therapist, doctor, surgeon, and the team has a vote, right? Whether it's the coach, position coach, the GM, or ownership, right? And it has to be 3 unanimous yes votes for it to be a go. Without the 3, it's not happening. So each party can slow down the process. At the beginning of the last season, Ronald Acuna Jr. had this, we were saying at Sports Injury Central, he's going to DH. He's not playing in the field. And there was a surprise midnight text, right? You remember that? And all of a sudden he was playing in right field. And we were like, and my guys in our office were giving me a little bit of grief. Like, I thought he said he wasn't playing. I said, what can I tell you? I don't think he's ready to play in right field. And it was a short-lived experiment, right? At the beginning.
Well, he played a lot of right field, but he wasn't ready to play right field.
Yeah, I mean, right? I mean, he wasn't ready in my mind and so forth. So anyways, so there's a lot that goes into Bryce Harper's return, not just the doctor saying yes. I mean, the athlete has to feel comfortable, right, and want to do it. And knowing Bryce Harper a little bit, I think he will always want to say yes. But the team may want to play the long game, and you're right. But the risk of hitting is just not as great as the risk of throwing a ball. So I think they're able to push it a slight little bit.
Yeah, you just the way you compared throwing the baseball from right field to what a pitcher does was really interesting, because I've used that comparison myself, and it's why I think they're best served by following the Ohtani plan to the letter and that is having him DH throughout 2023 and then not really ramp up to throw a ball and play the outfield again until 2024. He's got he's got 9 more years under contract. So take your time. That's what I would do.
And the other thing I'd say is, it's hard to, harness a world-class athlete who plays all out. But I would argue that there's more danger in a head-first slide with that elbow out, getting the elbow caught and tweaked than perhaps at the plate. So maybe
that's something they'll do.
Slides,
They'll have to. I mean, they would have to. They'd have to stress that to him not to do that, because it's his instinct to always do that. Try to stretch every single into a double, every one.
I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, and it's in their nature, guys like that, to go all out, and to try and get them to change that pattern is difficult, but I'm sure it can be done. You also mentioned the oblique on Juan Soto. The only thing he's got going for him there is, as a left-handed batter, it's his left oblique. So perhaps, look, obliques are bad. Apparently it's mild. Hopefully it is. And of course, I'm in San Diego, so my son's a big Padre fan and the whole deal. So I'm hoping that won't be a long-term absence. For a left-handed batter, a right oblique is worse, but any batter, oblique is a big deal.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's easy for us to say it's mild. It hurts. I mean, you've got an oblique. Like talking to guys who've had it, it's hard to do anything. It's hard to even sleep. It just takes time to heal, and so that's going to just be a source of frustration for him and that team, isn't it?
Well, the Padres are starting out with some bad luck. I mean, the only good news is so far Tatis looks okay, but he's of course going to be gone for 20 games before he comes back. Joe Musgrove and the kettlebell on his toe, and Austin Nola with a ball off the nose and a broken nose, and now Soda. I mean, it's a interesting start to the season here. So thankfully, so far they're all short-term type injuries, but they obviously can build up. So with all the new rules changes, and I know you've been all over that. In terms of the rules of baseball, but do you have any worries? Does anyone related to injuries in terms of the rule changes? Do you see any worries that pop into your head?
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting questions about that. I've been the rules change writer for quite a while now, all spring. It's really mostly what I've done, and most of this has worked great. The games are 25 shorter, 25 minutes, and it's all dead time. That part's great. I think there are a couple potential worries for injury, though, and this is one that people have speculated about, and that is pitchers' health. Without the recovering time of taking all the time they need between pitches, given the velocity that pitchers throw these days. And the interesting thing, Dr. Chow, is that in the minor leagues last year, there was actually a decrease in the pitcher injury rate. We had a pitcher coach for the White Sox a week or so ago expressed concern that he felt like the lack of recovery time between pitches was a danger and an injury risk. And so I'm really curious what you think.
Well, I think it depends on the athlete, right? I mean, it may affect some more than others. But also it's just a quick change. I mean, they've been doing it all their lives this way, and all of a sudden to change, I think that is something. You can make the argument that if you're on the bench less between innings, in other words, you get back on the mound more quickly, you're not cooling off. You don't have to cool down all the way and warm up if it's a long inning. So there's a potential upside there. But obviously, how often can you continue to again and again and again do throwing at 100 miles an hour like a lot of these guys do, right? In terms of things. So I think one of the effects might be, I think coaches and pitching coaches are going to pay very close attention to fatigue. And we already have quick hooks nowadays. I mean, The podcast we did prior to this one with you, we were talking NBA basketball and load management, right? And the effects on injuries and so forth. Baseball's been doing load management longer than the NBA's been doing load management, right? And look, when I was growing up, the relief pitcher pitched the eighth and ninth inning and maybe the seventh, right? That's how old I am. And it was a 4-man rotation, right? And now it's a 5-6-man rotation, the eighth inning guy, the setup guy, the ninth inning guy, etc. And I think that may come into play more, that where, if they see a guy tiring out and his mechanics changing to prevent injuries with the quicker pitch clock, you may end up with a slightly quicker hook this year.
It's interesting that you say that. Just in the minute or so I've got left, because what people in baseball would tell you is, like that era that you referred to, back then, pitchers had to navigate their way through a game without throwing every pitch as hard as they could humanly throw it, and we had a lot fewer injuries back then than we have now. And so maybe the fact that there's less recovery time, the moral of the story is find other ways to do it, besides just throwing every pitch as hard as you can at max effort. You think that's feasible?
That's a baseball pitcher's question, and maybe. But I'm also interested in some of the fun things that happen. Instead of at the ballpark, you've got mound ball and things, traditional games that kids and people play. My guess is there'll probably be a lot of fake pitch clock countdowns, right, to try and
it's always been a fear.
Opposing shot clock violations or things, for basketball, right? I mean, so who knows? I think there'll be some interesting twists and turns here with the rules that we may not anticipate there. But anyways, Jayson, thank you so much for your time. It's great to kick off baseball season with you. We'll make it an annual tradition and visit again. And if we can ever help you, thank you so much again. And hopefully I'm delivering a little bit of good news for you, for Phillies and what have you, a little bit of hope and optimism. And the fact that there's negative news for the Mets probably is even better or as good.
I really don't root for any team. I certainly don't root for anybody to get hurt.
No, I'm just joking about that. But thank you again, and we'll take a quick break here, and we'll return for the rest of the Sports Injury Central Pro Football Doc podcast. Thanks again, Jayson.
Thank you, Dr. Chow.
All right, thanks to Jayson Stark again, and we'll do part 2 of the podcast. Meanwhile, the research was what you say. Kyle Schwarber tore his ACL in April, came back for the World Series, didn't do much, but of course Taylor, Mr. Phillies fan, says, "Oh, for sure, Hoskins is coming back and playing in the World Series." And of course, the rest of us just chuckled. I mean, Philly's got to get to the World Series first. You got to get by the Padres.
Yeah,
wasn't a problem last year.
Yeah, I've reloaded this year though.
Yeah, new look Padres though.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the rest of the thing. Okay, so big news. Actually, in spring training yesterday with my son and daughter, I probably will tweet some stuff out. The Padres are really nice. They met a lot of players. My son had his new Bogarts jersey. He got that signed by Bogarts. They got a bunch of stuff. I probably should call them and bring in their balls and who's who. And everyone from Trevor Hoffman to Manny Machado to Joe Musgrove, and they're the little baseball rats in jerseys, with the balls. The Padres are nice. They let them go back and watch some stuff a little bit privately, and they thanks to Josh Stein, and they had some fun. Now, during that time when they were doing their little kids-only tour, Dad's Not Invited, I had to go and find something to do, and we ended up at a sports bar just to find something to do and watch the Aztec game, and we actually started some pretty good "I Believe" chants at the end of the game. Not me.
There you go. That was intense.
Now, did you guys, Mr. San Diego Staters, believe or no?
I believe it was a foul at the end. 100%.
That was a foul. It's just like the James Bradbury. If you want to reference with it, it's a foul. I know you don't want to call it there, but he was tugging onto his hip and tugging him down, so it's a foul. It's just at the 0.0 minute mark. You don't want that to be the
Yeah. No, you don't want that, but of course the room didn't. Depends on who you were, right? If you were Aztec fan, it was a great call, but here's the thing: there were 6 seconds left. Why did they inbound the ball and then play around and dribble out to the outside? I mean, even if there's no foul, you had no chance at a rebound.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, and you didn't have enough time to drive all the way to the hoop. You had to pull up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So I think they lucked out in the end.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed, look, when my son plays basketball, he's 10. One of the things the coaches say every time is when you get, besides dribbling with your head up, right? They're 10. Every time you get the ball, you need to look at the basket and be a threat. Half the time the Aztecs were there's only certain guys that wanted to look at the basket, right? I mean,
scoring's not the specialty.
Athletic. I love Coach Dutcher, the whole program, but they got to really attack or do something. It'll be interesting. At least they get FAU, so they got a chance.
Yeah, Gonzaga UCLA game was good on the other side too. Seemed like the UCLA injuries finally caught up.
UCLA injuries finally caught up, and I think the NCAA and the refs got enough grief about Drew Timmy's traveling as they weren't going to let him do it at all.
They called like 3 of them. I saw that. You're right. There's like 2. They're like, "Oh, it's traveling." He looked at the refs like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, he didn't get that last game."
His moves don't change. It's just they started calling him.
Yeah, well, I mean, he took 6 steps in the social media clip that everyone shared. Anyways. And then, in the end, the only thing that I think we were wrong on, as we did a lot of the NCAA stuff, is, we actually knew that the Miami Center was going to be fine by now. We just thought in the early rounds.
Yeah,
right.
Norchad Omier.
He probably outperformed his ankle, even in the early rounds. But by now, he's good to go, and certainly for the Final Four. So Norchad Omier should be fine. No big deal. This should be exciting. You guys going to Houston?
Yeah, right away.
Virtually.
Look, there are no flights.
Yeah, I bet.
None at all. They're all
Yeah, I mean,
everyone
tickets will be
pre-plans
cheaper
that.
than most years. Well, first of all, because it's a NFL stadium, there's going to be 80,000 people.
Yes.
Your view from the top deck won't be that good, but they probably won't be that expensive. I mean, there are no blue blood programs, right?
Yep.
Right.
What I wanted to talk about is Kansas State. We did think Norwell was going to have an issue with his ankle. He did outperform, I would say. He had his usual 20 and 10 plus assists. He's been a star of this tournament. Is this another game that it could maybe affect him, or is this something that he can put in his rearview mirror now?
Norwell?
Yeah.
They're out.
Well, they got knocked out by FAU.
Oh, so I'm so sorry. Yeah. But
Hang in there.
No, I'm a fault.
I'm picking against K-State in the Final Four.
What did you think on his ankle, though? Was that just a small, minor ankle sprain, or is that just a final game he was going to play? So he was going to play through it, and
he's going to play through it. I mean, but yeah.
I took his under assist because you said some stuff, so I have a little bit of a grudge.
Gotcha. You want to go basketball, NBA, or baseball next?
Now let's go LeBron. He finally made it back. coming off the bench like you suggested, Doc. Like you thought he would as they ease him back in.
I didn't see the game. They've been doing all right without him with the new lineup. There's probably an acclimation period, right, of him playing with some of his new teammates. Interesting his comments, though. 2 doctors. He claims they said surgery, and then he saw the LeBron James of feet, whatever that means.
You can't say that. You can't say that. Come on.
No.
He so told himself. Sorry, but you can't say stuff like that.
Here's my question. Is he saying he saw a third opinion, or is he saying he asked himself?
That's a good
Yeah.
question.
The
You're
reason
right.
I asked that is the follow-up question was, what country was he from? Which is an interesting question, because I would have said, what state? Was this a local doctor, or did you fly somewhere? What
Yeah.
state, right? The question was, what country? And he said, I don't know.
That was odd. Yeah, that was an odd second line of questioning.
Which then led me to believe he asked himself or someone who wasn't a doctor, right? I mean,
He asked the only person he trusted, which is himself.
Oh,
LeBron James of feet might be himself. I don't know. That's another. I don't know. But we've been thinking all along this plantar fascia, and this is why he's not 100%. But if it really is a tendon, there's no way it's a major tendon, right? It's not an Achilles tendon. It's not a posterior tib tendon. It's at most a peroneal brevis tendon, something that you can try and play through, which, he finished the game that he hurt it on. That'll be interesting. Here's the thing. It's not like an ankle sprain that, okay, he played 30 minutes this game, he's going to play 36 the next and be 100%. The ramp up is not going to be like that. It's going to be more flat.
Flat, yeah.
Yeah.
I will say I watched the game. He's not the kind of person that listens to bench units. He did stay out there longer than he should have on multiple shifts with the second unit. But yeah, you were right. He was tentative. He didn't look great. He was. He did drive. He did get 8 free throws, so he got lucky with some points. But
led team scoring, just barely. But yeah, not usual. Brown.
I took my son to the Suns 76ers game. I was impressed at how Joel Embiid is a man among boys. He is a big boy. I mean, size-wise, not just height, but he is a big boy. And pretty clearly he was frustrated by the smaller Suns players guarding him, like gnats around him.
Yep.
But also clearly not 100%. If you didn't know he was injured, you'd almost call him lazy. And I don't think that was the case. It was a back-to-back on the road. And one key play in the second half where he ended up with the ball underneath the rim, and he didn't even dunk it. It was like an old school, almost college dunk,
He
didn't
barely
dunk it. He didn't want to jump.
Yeah. Yep. You remember I showed you the quote after the game. He said he's tired. I mean, like you said, he played the first end of the back-to-back in Golden State. He's 37 minutes, 46 points. He did score 28 and 32, but like you said, it's he's pushing for those 28, right? They don't look good. He's not.
Honestly, it was a 12-year-old playing against 10-year-olds in terms of size. Yeah. So he's going to get his points, but
it's interesting too. He's going to play tonight too because they play the Nuggets, so he's not mentioning any Jokic matchups. I would argue he's only playing because of the MVP race.
Yes, he did say in the quote,
Sixers could only drop to 4th. They're good in the standings playoff wise. He knows he has to keep playing and keep proving himself. He can't just sit towards the end of the season.
In the quote, he said he needs a day off. He's said that, so he does know that. But yeah, this is arguably a game where he might have, but now he can't.
The question is he just tired or is it the calf?
It has to be a combination of both, right? He played 44 minutes 2 days before to 37. He's playing way more than he should for a guy of his size. And he can play maybe 35, not 38 to 42 every single night.
Yep. All right. What else you guys got? Kevin Durant's close.
Kevin Durant's close. Timberwolves got their pieces back. Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards just played yesterday after missing 3 games with the ankle sprain. So everyone's in that final push to the NBA.
That was a quick turnaround for him. Good job.
Yeah, he didn't look quite as dynamic.
Yeah, 5 for 14.
He's gonna be out there.
Yeah.
Lamar
Jackson requested a trade, Doc. Surprised to hear that.
Requested a trade.
It just came out when we were in the middle of our our pod.
I was trying to tie it to injuries, but a guy that missed the last 2 seasons says, "I'm done with you, team."
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting. He's requested a trade. I mean, the owners' meetings are out here in Arizona.
Did he do that on purpose? Because I'm reading it now. There's like pictures of Harbaugh stepping away from all the coaches and taking phone calls. They're asking about the tweets. Like I haven't seen the tweet yet. Like definitely did this in the middle of
Timing
the
it for the owners' meeting. That's.
And then you're making your coach kind of look a little weird by not knowing what's going on, right? It doesn't look good as a whole.
Yeah, it's I don't know. There's some mystery to this, right? And you would think that if he was really trying to make this splash and other things, maybe he should be out in Arizona and do the Jerry Maguire walk, through the lobby of the Arizona Biltmore.
That'd be great.
There's
that wasn't that old. That was a better reference. It was usually you go earlier. I've seen Jerry Maguire.
Wait. What year was Jerry Maguire?
92, maybe 94.
It's not any
That's
older than any of the other references that I've made.
How old is
It's
Brady?
older than us.
Brady Bunch.
What's
What's Brady Bunch?
Well, okay, it's not Animal House. Right, but,
See,
but 92. Were you even born in 92?
Exactly that year. I wasn't watching. I have seen it. I didn't watch it.
Well, that's what I mean. So you got to get caught up. Oh, that reminds me. I got a lot of grief online. I posted a picture of James Harden. Like, I thought
you did. You did get a lot of grief for that. Yeah.
I was like, what is he wearing? And I was commenting as much as this purple velour suit. Okay, I get the ice and whatever. And then apparently had a T-shirt that was iconic Little Kim album. I will admit.
Kim. That was you went after Little Kim. That was a problem for people. I
asked an innocent question. What is he wearing?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not in the know. I got all these comments. Why don't you listen to a rap album sometime? And I'm like, albums? Do they make albums anymore? I mean,
Kim Kardashian comment. You're like, that's a Little Kim, and you're like, you mean Kim Kardashian? And people,
I put the laughing emoji.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, can we have a little fun?
Yeah, they were.
I will admit, like, I know I've heard Little Kim song, but see, you guys know I'm not. The only new music I've listened to are the kids in the car, right? I don't really, listen to a lot of music nowadays.
You're not really a rap guy.
I'm old, but an album, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've listened to an album since they actually made albums.
The one thing you were right about the picture, Doc, he's a little hefty for sure. He's not all that stuff about him and his weight and stuff. He always is a little round.
He's got broad shoulders, man. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I was honestly, my comment was more than half about the suit than the T-shirt. The T-shirt was the throw.
I don't know how many people were getting that. I noticed it because my dad loves rap to that. But I mean, like, I'm not sure someone's looking at that shirt and being like, "Little Kim, you should know that." I don't think that's like, but like,
well,
everyone took what you wear negative.
I wasn't close enough to see that was a recognizable person,
right.
kind of thing. And the other thing that's interesting is I got some comments like, "You're so white." I'm like,
Twitter's so stupid.
I'm surprised you didn't touch.
That's writing.
I'm surprised you didn't touch the Drewski one, Doc.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't touch the Drewski one. The guy falling down the steps.
Oh, yeah, but see, like, I only did that because people would tweet it at me to comment on it, and and I would have not done that. But he tweeted it himself.
Yes,
he was self-deprecating.
Yes,
which made it fair game to have some fun. High ankle Patrick Mahomes. If this was a fan doing it and he was really hurt badly or something, I wouldn't have touched it. I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but he tweeted it himself.
Yeah.
And people tagged me. I was like, okay, we can have some fun and be lighthearted. That's the problem with like email and other things. I don't think you get the full intonation and what people mean, right? And maybe we don't get the full intonation what people mean when they're replying either, to be fair. But like,
when someone says you're white, Doc, I get that part, and that doesn't make sense.
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, whatever. It's fine. Why has it got to be about color?
Right.
We'll hit some football ones real quick. Just some offseason surgery news since we last talked. Russell Wilson, right knee scope. I'll give you 3, Doc. You rank them in order of concern. KJ Hamler tore his pec, I think a couple weeks ago. And then Mecole Hardman, core surgery, said he's going to be ready for OTAs.
Not really concerned about any of them. I would say the fastest recovery, the biggest long-term worry depends on what you find in Russell Wilson's knee, but not a lot of worry. We already have him in the 90s.
Right.
The surest return, not going to bother him, is KJ Hamler. He's got enough time. He's out right now, but he's going to be able to work lower body and run routes. But by the time the season starts, he'll be able to block and do everything. Mecole Hardman is the quickest return, and it usually is very successful. But being that fast twitch speed guy, there's a small chance that it's not completely. So not really worried about any of them. But the interesting thing is, if you go back to the playoffs, when everyone was talking about Lane Johnson's core muscle, at Sports Injury Central, we were saying Mecole Hardman's core muscle, even though it wasn't reported. And now he's had the surgery. So different. Hardman can be back the quickest, but there's a slight chance it lingers. Slight. Hamler's going to be fine, but it's just going to take some time. And Russell Wilson should be fine, barring, finding something at the time of the scope that's unusual. So good news is not worried about any of the 3.
Hardman needs to return quickest too, because he's the one that actually needs to learn a new system, because he's the one that's on the Jets now. Hamler is one that's interesting because he's going to be a second year off an ACL tear, and it's with Russell Wilson, maybe a better offense. He's one that I'm looking for in the fantasy in the future.
He was multi-ligament too, right?
Yes, he was one of the lowest individual six scores of the season last year. It was like a 23 to 25, I believe, that range. So we didn't want anything to do with him last year, but this is something that he can improve on. This is definitely a issue with the workout injury, but
I think he might improve, and he won't have as much off-season time in a new system. But the only worry now is essentially missing. Well, he played last year, but not a lot.
And then he had the reps.
Missing a lot of time for a young guy is the only concern. But he's probably not on anyone's radar. But as a flyer, he might be okay. Yeah. And Mecole Hardman isn't in a hurry to get healthy until the trade happens.
Until he knows who's throwing to him. Yeah.
I did want to say the owners meeting, there's some quotes coming out. John Lynch said, this is interesting, and you're like this: Brock Purdy is the leader in the clubhouse in QB competition, if healthy.
Well, I've always said John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have been very honest. The people saying that Brock Purdy is a lock to be ready are reporters,
right?
Not Lynch and Shanahan.
No, it's never come out of their mouth. Definitely,
it's not come out of their mouth. And obviously, so far I was wrong. They didn't sign Matt Ryan; they signed Sam Darnold.
They took the discount for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Matt Ryan,
as a Niner,
so yeah.
As a Niner fan, I'm much more confident starting the year with Lance and Darnold than Lance and nobody. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
John Lynch is going to be honest. He's always been honest.
Yep.
All right. I'll tell you a scenario. You guys tell me who's the beast of the week in this one. Bay Bridge series, Giants against A's yesterday. Gets in the 5th, 6th inning. Giants are up a bit. Grounder to third, throws to second base, gets the out. Everyone runs in. Both teams are off the field in the dugout, and then Gabe Kapler, the Giants manager, comes out and goes, "That was the second out." So everyone had to come back on the field and get the third out. Everyone just pace of play is screwing everyone up. They're running off the field with only 2 outs.
Wait. So the umpires didn't say anything?
Umpires all missed it. They let everybody run off the field.
Game. They're like, it's done. But Gabe Kapler, he was a Phillies manager back in the day. A couple years ago. He is an analytical freak. So like he's counting every single out. So he's a ASS as well. So he's one.
Okay, here's my question. And I get it. Everyone's mailing it in. Today is the last preseason game. We're going to head there next.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, the kids are trying to get gear, right?
Sure.
Give me what doesn't fit in your car.
That's smart.
Anyways. Worthless junk, you know. It's fun for him, but the greatest part is, I got him to sign. Who is that? I don't know.
I don't know.
Get out the roster and look, you know.
We'll figure it out.
I'd give it to Gabe Kapler, but I need to know more. Did he wait till everyone was in the dugout, or did he start signaling, stay out there? If he's
everyone was in the dugout.
He should have known immediately, right?
Everyone was in the dugout. It was like in the dugout, like a 2 Mississippi, and then he just strolls out to the ump and goes, that was 2.
He waited for the celebration. Yeah, he's not a nice person, Doc. He did it on purpose.
I like the second baseman not even trying to turn 2 because it was a tailor-made double play ball, and he just like took it a second and started running in.
Yeah, they're trying to go home.
You know what? Did any of the fans say anything?
No. I mean,
the beast in that scenario might be the beer vendors. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
get on with it. Whatever.
It's
game was 9-5. It was a full-on game, right? Like end the game.
Yeah, spring training. Who cares? Now, did the pitcher have to warm up again, or did he just come out?
I'm sure he got some warm-up tosses.
I would ask for 8 pitches just to add on.
That's on the umps. Yeah, that's on the umps.
Get my 8 in. Yeah.
The pitch clock is interesting. I mean, it definitely. I mean, that was my first game, right? Yesterday, and so it sped things up. That's for sure.
Yeah, less pickoffs and bigger bags too. We'll see how that affects stolen bases and stuff like that. So it's big for fantasy. Yeah, we got some fantasy baseball content on the website. I know Taylor wrote like 4.5 pages on 5 guys you can trust despite their injuries. So
we said like a paragraph each. So I don't know what that means.
Well, as in our Jayson Stark conversation, my son also believes in Bryce Harper coming back, so he drafted him.
Might be more pressure with Hoskins out now, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. All right. What else we got today? Or sure, it's time to roll on.
I think that's all I had, Doc.
All right. Baseball season here. Final Four, NBA playoffs, final end of the regular season positioning, and lots of football talk with the owners meeting and draft not that far away. Sports Injury Central. Go to Sick Insights and you see the quick updates on everything. And then please hit the subscribe button here and you'll be notified of all the podcasts. And we'll continue to have guests during the off season here. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for watching and listening.